Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're excited to have people here with us in the moot courtroom and then also online via Zoom. So if you see me looking at this computer, it's because we are allowing for people to participate virtually and they are submitting questions. So my name is Elizabeth Kronk Warner. I have the privilege of being the Dean at the S.J. Quinney College of Law, and we welcome you here today for this discussion about Legally Blonde. My pronouns are she and hers, and as I like to do at the start of any presentation, I do want to acknowledge that this land that we're on today in Salt Lake City, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshu, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. So it seems really appropriate that we should be here today with these fantastic and inspiring women to engage in this community outreach activity. So we had a chance earlier to watch Legally Blonde, which celebrates its 20th anniversary this year. It's hard to believe that this movie's been out since 2001. I guess it's not 2020. And so it was fun to rewatch the movie. And we thought that this was kind of a fun way to kick off our academic year because it is the 20th celebration of Legally Blonde. And many have looked to Legally Blonde as one of the movies that has perhaps had the biggest impact on people wanting to go to law school. And this movie is pointed to as having tremendous impact, even 20 years later, on those wanting to go to law school. So it seems really appropriate and a nice way to start the semester. So joining me today are three amazing women. I do feel that I was just not as thoughtful as them because you'll note that they're all wearing pink. In honor of Elle Woods. So I thought that was really clever. I forgot my pink today. But we're going to go in alphabetical order. So each of our panelists is going to give a brief introduction, 3 to 5 minutes, on their initial thoughts about the movie and how it intersects with the practice of law or with law school. And then after that, we've prepared a couple of questions that we're going to ask the panelists. And for those of you either in person or for those of you who are online, please feel free to submit a question. Our panelists would love to hear from you. If you're online, you can see at the bottom of the page, there's a Q&A button. If you hit that button, you can submit your questions, and you'll see that I have a computer laptop next to me, and so I'll be able to see your questions on the laptop. So if you see me looking at the laptop, that's why. So with that, I want to introduce briefly our panelists. So first is Hillary Atkins, who is in her third year at the S.J. Quinney College of Law, and she is the president of our Student Bar Association. So we're really excited to have her and her perspective. Next will be Shima Baradaram Boffman, who is our Dean of Faculty and Research and also a professor of law specializing in criminal law. So I'll be very interested to hear her thoughts on the trial in Legally Blonde. And last but certainly not least is a recently named super lawyer, Christina Jepson, who is a partner at Parson, Bailey, and Latimer, an alumna of the S.J. Quinney College of Law, and she just finished her 2-year term as president of our Board of Trustees. So we're really excited to have, again, 3 amazing women given their perspectives and 3 women who have had a different focus in their career. So we look forward to that. So with that, we'll start off with President Atkins and her initial thoughts on the movie.
Thank you, Dean Kronk Warner, and thank you guys for having me here today. I'm Hillary Atkins, a 3L here at the law school and SBA president. This is by far my favorite movie. I've always watched it at the beginning of every school year just to get some little inspiration and courage that I can keep going. Obviously, yes, I am blonde, so I look up to Elle Woods and just Reese Witherspoon in general religiously. And this movie did have a huge impact on me pursuing my dream to go to law school. I felt like I always wanted to go, I knew that, but obviously, as you see in the movie, society sometimes, makes it hard for people to imagine their dream and think that they can actually do it. So seeing Elle Woods conquer and find herself and be able to be as successful as she was, and Harvard letting her in as a fashion major and saying they want diversity was very funny, but at the same time, look at what she ended up doing. So I really relate to this movie and happy to be here.
Hello. Wow. I'm so happy to be here as well. I feel like of all the invitations I've received from Dean Kronk Warner, this has been the most fun. And I've been looking forward to this more than anything because it's very fun to talk about a movie, especially one that is so beloved. I think probably I could say safely every woman that's gone to law school has seen this movie, maybe everyone, because it's one of the best legal movies. But, as far as things that are fun, I think the way to make something not fun is to bring a professor on the panel. So I'm about to make it not fun. But no, the initial thought that came to me with this, and as I was thinking about this movie, is kind of our perceptions of things. And I want you all to think, everyone to just kind of close your eyes and think, okay, envision a prosecutor, for instance, right? Because we're in criminal law, or we're talking about criminal law with the movie. And just kind of picture that person. And then now think of a judge, right? What does that person look like? Who are you seeing? And, I'm opening my eyes. Want you to think about what those people look like. And in my mind, when I did that exercise, despite my experience and, with lots of different people being judges and prosecutors, for both of those examples, I thought of a white male. I thought of, the guy on Law and Order, that famous guy on Law and Order with the gray hair that we all know, right? Him for the prosecutor, and for a judge, I thought of John Roberts. And maybe others thought differently. But I think what this movie really points out is this kind of unique type of implicit bias. And I think we all have this, right? It's not like a secret. It's this, we have this little bias against women, against blondes, against people of color. It comes in all different ways. But I think one thing I love about this movie is that it helps us to challenge those thoughts of, why is it that me as a woman of color thinks of a white male as a prosecutor and a judge? I've seen plenty of female prosecutors and people of color prosecutors, and and on. But still, those perceptions are there, and kind of makes me think, what can we think through as far as how do we change those perceptions, right? How can I get maybe my daughter or our law students now to maybe have different perception? I'd actually love to hear who Hillary thought of in her mind when she envisioned a judge or a prosecutor. Maybe her perception's different than mine because we're in different generations. But anyway, that's my initial thoughts.
Thank you. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. I just love this movie, but my husband and I have 4 daughters, and they watch this movie a lot. They love this movie. And I've just watched it as entertainment. I've never really thought about it too deeply. But of course, today I was thinking about it very, very deeply. And I was enjoying maybe is the wrong word, but appreciating the stereotypes and all the different stereotypes. And stereotypes are interesting because there were so many stereotypes in the movie, right? Of course, there's the blonde, but there's a gay pool boy, and there's the lesbian law student, and she's very much a stereotype, right? And Warner's a stereotype. Everyone's a stereotype. And stereotypes are funny, and they make us laugh, and they make for good movies, but we have to think about beyond them and think, what are human beings beyond their stereotypes? Are all people from the East Coast the same? I don't know, maybe they are, I don't know. Is everyone from LA the same? Is gay woman the same, and of course they're not. So I think that's really interesting. I was also thinking about the fact that movies had such an impact on me before I went to law school. Not this movie, because it came out after I graduated, but I didn't know any lawyers when I went to law school. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. So to me, like, I watched movies and I thought I wanted to go to law school and be a lawyer that's from the movies, which that's not how the law is. Anyone who practices law knows that's not really how it is. But it is fun and inspiring, and I think I was talking to someone before this about all the fun movies, the old law movies that were so inspiring to me, and I loved so much. And it's good to watch them and enjoy what maybe the public thinks of being a lawyer. So looking forward to the discussion.
That is an interesting question. What does the public think of lawyers? So actually, let's start off. I just got a question from John Call, who said, would you agree then that the movie stereotypes white male professors as lecherous buffoons? What do you think of that stereotype?
Well, the thing about stereotypes is I'm sure there are a few people out there that are like that, and there's lots of people who are not. And so, we're all victims of stereotypes, and there are plenty of lovely white men who are professors and not leches and not buffoons, and probably lots of Harvard professors that are not like that. So again, just more ways to think about how often we're presented with stereotypes and how much they're affecting what we believe about the world.
I'll just add one thought to that. It just seems like, and this is for me personally, I think with every time I make a kind of snap judgment, it's like, how many times do I prove myself wrong where you hear a backstory or you totally misjudge things? It's like, it happens enough that I wish I could just let go of these preconceived notions about anybody, right? What does a professor look like? What does a gay person act like? What does, all of these things. And I just, I don't know why that is like a human foible that I continue to struggle with. Maybe you all don't, but it is so hard to let go of those notions, I think.
I do think, too, it's important to realize this is 20 years old, and it did age, I think, very well compared to other films. But the practice of law, teaching law school, who goes to law school, who's allowed in law school. When law school started, women weren't really allowed, and it was a guys' club. And so how these professors taught has definitely changed a lot, but especially within the last 20 years with everything that's been happening. And so I do not think now law school has like male professors that are like that anymore, and I think it's a great change. Yeah.
Well, as Dean of Law School, I'm very happy to hear that. So it was mentioned earlier, this idea of stereotypes and kind of stereotypes of law. So my first question for our panelists is, how are lawyers depicted in this movie, and how is the practice of law depicted in this movie?
I can start off. And I think this goes for a lot of movies about the law. Very black and white and very boring, and I feel like society kind of thinks that too, and I think this is why this movie is just so unbelievable, because it really breaks that stereotype. It's like, this isn't the status quo anymore. You can wear pink in a courthouse and be fine, and obviously we still have a long way to go, I feel like, but this was definitely a starting point, and the law does not have to be just black and white, and it definitely needs more personality and more passion. I think her graduation speech really summed up how the practice of law should be depicted, and it's not just boring and black and white.
Yeah, I can make a comment on that too. I think when I was interviewing in law school, kind of around when she was supposed to be in law school in the 2000s, we were advised as women to always wear skirts to interviews, wear black, never wear any colors. I don't know if any of the other panelists are nodding, so I think we've had this. And I really do think those notions have changed, right? As far as women being able to wear a dress and a jacket to an interview, or whatever she might want to wear. I think it's those types of things have changed. And I think, I'm hoping, like Hillary has made the point, that as time has progressed, these notions have changed as more women have entered the legal profession. I mean, our law school is now more women than men, and it's been for, I think, a couple of years. And so I do think that hopefully those notions and those stereotypes and those problems that she faced have changed.
I'm going to make a completely different point. I think the public thinks that the law is a lot more exciting than it actually is. So in these movies, there is always they have epiphanies in the courtrooms. She suddenly realizes that, if she had gotten a perm and got in the shower, then, that solves the whole case, right? And that's not how the law is. It's actually very boring and black and white. Hillary, sorry. No, it's not black and white, but it's if they did a real movie, people joke about this. Back in my day, when I was in law school, there was a show called Ally McBeal that was really popular. And on Ally McBeal, she would get the case on Monday. On Tuesday, they would do depositions. On Wednesday, they would do trial. On Thursday, they would do the appeal. And on Friday, they would go to the bar and celebrate. If only that's what the law was like. If we would, my friends and I back then would joke, if there were really movies about the law, you'd get the case on Monday and then they'd lock you with some documents in a room for about 3 years and you would look at them and, and nothing would ever happen. So, and same with this movie, things are happening very quickly. Her first year of law school, she gets on a big murder case, which she ends up being in charge of, which would never happen, of course. But so I think maybe the public thinks we have a more exciting profession than we actually do, but don't tell anyone.
Can I give one comment on that? I agree. I think Christina is absolutely right. Things take a lot longer in practice of law, and obviously criminal law is the same. I mean, nothing gets done. Like she was saying, her perm, so she gets, to have a trial in 6 months in that serious of a case, no way, right? That there would be a lot of delays and it wouldn't happen. But something, and even in my litigation, I remember following up after I left my firm to do a Fulbright. Like 2 years later, I finally found out all the work I had done, what happened. I mean, it was like 3-year process. So yes, you're right. But at the same time, I think there are really neat things I did when I was practicing law, particularly on the criminal side. I think it really can be exciting. The facts are fascinating. The people, just their stories were just as compelling as, some of these stories that you see. And so I do think there's enough there. It's not going to be packed in a movie, but I think there's enough nuggets of excitement in the practice of law, particularly, criminal litigation or any kind of litigation. In my experience, that's what all I've done in the past. But I do think there's something there for, that is exciting. And that same element where it does take that part of your brain that maybe even law school doesn't teach you, right? The Elle Woods effect of this, where she knows this outside knowledge and is able to kind of think quick on her feet. I think those kinds of skills I found useful in depositions and other things where I wasn't taught it, but it's like you kind of, I don't know, through your life experience can kind of pull through.
I think it's funny too with the whole excitement of being a lawyer thing. I completely agree. And when Elle Woods goes and talks to, Paulette's ex-husband about the dog. 3 years ago, I was like, yes, she got it. I don't know what she said, but it sounds so smart. She just threw out legal jargon. And I was like, wow, she's great. And now that I'm in law school and understand what all that means, that's from 4 or 5 different subjects and none of it makes sense. But no one would know that because it just sounds so smart and you need to go to law school and practice to be able to understand that. And that's exciting to people.
Well, speaking of that, so the scene where Elle goes to Paulette's boyfriend to get the dog certainly potentially raises some ethical issues. As you mentioned, not knowing the law, it sounded pretty smart and perhaps intimidating, but now that you have almost completed your legal studies, you know that it was a bunch of gibberish. So what are the ethical issues that are presented by that scene and Elle as a law student going and doing that?
Well, right away, as a law student, we're not allowed to give legal advice. We're not barred. We're not practicing. We're still learning. We have a long way to go. So you cannot give legal advice, and she went and represented herself as Miss Bonafonte's lawyer. So definitely not okay and against the rules.
I feel like a lot of, even when you become a lawyer and you are bar certified, I feel like a lot of times I felt a little bit like a fraud just because there's so much law that you don't know that when clients would be asking me questions, I like as an associate, right? I never made it to partner like Christina, so maybe now she knows everything. But I just felt like there's so many questions they ask me that I don't know the answer to. So it's kind of like you're just figuring it out along as you go, don't you feel like? I mean, I guess that those are ethical issues in itself of, not misrepresenting or not over qualifying whatever you're saying or pretending you know when you don't. But yeah, I don't know what you think, Christina.
Yeah, and you're probably not supposed to make things up either. I'm not sure, but maybe you're not supposed to say habeas corpus, which I think means release the body, but when she really meant release the dog. Maybe she should have used a different term. But she got the dog back, so that's good.
I actually wonder, have you done any clinics, Hillary? Because I do wonder if there's ethical issues in it, because you do a lot of interactions with clients at the clinics here. If people do think you're their lawyer, and do they ever ask you, has that ever come up for you in your time here?
No, I'm not in a clinic. I will be next semester, and I know
Okay.
we do have to follow the rules.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure, and I worked at a law firm this last summer, you just have to tell clients up front, like, you're a law clerk, like you need to make sure they know that you're not a practicing attorney, you're not barred.
Right.
And then at least make it clear so you're safe, and then whatever they want to think.
That's great.
So speaking of that, does this movie accurately portray law school, the practice of law, trials? What are your thoughts? Obviously, as has already been noted, it is a Hollywood representation of what happens, but are there any grains or nuggets of truth there?
The law school, some classes still have the Socratic method, and it's terrifying. I think like the first day of school, all the students are very nervous, quiet, and like shaking. That's pretty common, and not because it's that actually like scary, but you just have no idea what you're doing, and when you get called on, you can black out. But besides that, I would say law school now, there's just like a whole different community of people, and you're more comfortable with each other, you're all in the same boat, and that's kind of a common trend now, and you all understand that. So it's not as serious and cutthroat, because you all know you'll be there together, and also the legal community anywhere you are is so small. You don't want to be making enemies in law school.
I love that about the students at the U. I feel like the kind of like inner competition that you see in this movie does not exist, as far as I can tell. In my many years now at the U, it doesn't seem like students are competing against each other. They all have their own goals and seem to support each other really well, from what I can tell. And you can speak to it, but it seems like you felt the same way. But I think that's not accurate to what law school's like, as far as it's not competitive. It's people are trying to achieve their goals and helping each other, as far as I can tell.
When I started law school 29 years ago, I think the professors were a lot more aloof and not as approachable. I think if Shima had been my professor, I would have been thrilled. I see, and now I'm a professor myself, and I think professors are a lot more approachable and a lot more interested. Not that I didn't have great professors, I really did, but it was a very different dynamic, and I think it's a lot more supportive now. So, but there was a lot of truth to, that the Socratic method and how scary it is.
So the Elle Woods character, is she a good role model, bad role model, or perhaps something in between for female law students? What do you think?
I think she's a human being. I think this concept that there is someone out there who's a great role model or not a good role model, I'm sure there's probably a time when people would have said, oh, she's not, she's too pink, she's too sexual, she's too something, and hopefully she's just fine who she is.
I love that so much, Christina, because I think especially for women, we tend to put women in more of a box than others of like, this is what's appropriate, right? For smart women, I think it's like, you don't wear a lot of makeup, you don't dress a certain way, you don't wear loud colors, nothing shiny, nothing blingy, right? Lots of different, and then personality-wise, don't laugh too loud, don't do this and that. And it's like, you know, Elle Woods is her. She's a special, unique human being as portrayed, and she's lovely to watch because she is so, you know, unique. And I think, yeah, I hope that we can look at her and appreciate her, and then look at ourselves and all of us as different women, and you know, all of you watching, that, you know, we're all different humans, right? Not just women, but men as well. And can we appreciate all of ourselves for our differences, and not feel like, well, is she the kind of law student we, you know, maybe she's not your vision of a law student, but what is your vision? I mean, what does that even mean? I just think it's time to open our views, right? Like you said, she's a human being, and it's great to see that we can all be so different yet be lawyers, right?
She's a human being, and I think she's an amazing role model because she's true to herself. Yeah, she went to law school to follow a guy, hopefully get the ring, still continue to be there. She never once acknowledged, oh my God, I got into Harvard, I got a 179 in the LSAT. Yeah, but she stayed true to herself the whole entire time, even when she was like, okay, I'm actually going to do this thing on this journey, no matter what the reason behind it was. She found herself as well, and look at her now. I think there's going to be a third movie, and I think she's going to be president.
Elle Woods for president, huh? Just a reminder for those of you who are with us virtually or in the room, if anybody has your own questions, feel free to join in at any time. Again, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or raise your hand to ask a question. Now, this is, as we mentioned, the 20th anniversary of the film, and some commentators, as I mentioned earlier, have said that this movie has done more to encourage people to attend law school than any other movie. Why do you think that is?
I think that, you know, for the same reason I didn't initially go to law school, you know, I was kind of told, oh, law is for people that like boring stuff, if you like to read legal documents, you know, and it kind of doesn't appeal. But then, you know, you have a movie that does show the kind of sexy parts of the law, right, where it's interesting, you can use your intuition and speak in front of people, and I think it appeals to a different crowd. So I think, you know, a lot of people have the perception that law is boring, and, you know, maybe that doesn't appeal to all people. I don't think it is. I think law is fascinating, but I wonder if that's part of the reason.
Yeah, it shows you don't have to be the top of your class and have, you know, certain statistics and look a certain way to get into the law. And I just can't even, I just love this because I never thought I would be in law school. I never thought I would be where I am today. I never thought I'd have a job like I do. And she, I feel like, made that possible because I saw someone who looked like me when people always thought other things, and that I could never be here. Like when I was going to college, people I grew up with kind of looked at me like, you're going there. And at law school, right away, they're like, oh, you're going to be like Elle Woods. That's so cute. And I took it as a compliment. I'm like, yeah, I am going to be like Elle Woods. So I just think it really opened the doors for people instead of the movies where you just see these like very black and white professionals who are brilliant. It doesn't seem accessible. And now this movie and how much change that she's had, it's really just opened the doors.
I think people like it because it's the stereotype of lawyer superhero, right? Which, and I didn't mean to suggest that when we sit in rooms for years looking at documents that is not exciting, because I think the law is super exciting and super fun, and there are some great things about it. But if you think you're in court all the time having epiphanies, you're not. But she is the archetype of, you know, she is the superhero, and she does come through, and she saves the day, and she helps her client, and she becomes, you know, she's the speaker at graduation, and we all want to be that person in whatever we do, right? We want to be the hero, and we want to. So this is lawyer as hero.
I love that, and I think too, on the other side of it, it's like she has this vulnerability that I think everyone can identify with. I think that's why I can watch it over and over, because it's like awkward enough, like kind of like The Office, where you're just like, oh, like, you know, when she doesn't know the answer, and all these times where she just, you know, shows up at that party in a Playboy bunny costume, and everyone's dressed in, you know, you're just like, oh. But we've all been there at some level, right? Not maybe to that extent where it's funny, but I just think we all like feel for her. You're pulling for this underdog, and in all of our own ways, we're as different as she is, and we don't fit in sometimes, and we feel like we're clueless, and we don't, we can't get the job, and we're never going to get good grades. And I think everyone can relate to that feeling, and she just conquers it. So it's like one of those, like you said, like superhero stories, but for me, coming from this like place of just like vulnerability and this low point, and then she achieves so much, and it's so cool.
One thing I noticed this time watching the movie that I've noticed not really noticed before is the fitting in part, right? Because she comes from a world in LA where she completely fits in. She is homecoming queen, and I wasn't in a sorority, but she's like something president of the sorority. She's in her world, she is completely successful. And then she's transplanted to a different world that is really foreign to her. And she thinks she's going to be successful, because why wouldn't she be? That's been her life story. And then she's in this new world, new rules, new dress code, new language, new color scheme. And we've all had to do that sometimes in life, where you're somewhere new, somewhere, and you don't know the rules, and you have to figure out the rules. And you even see in the movie, I mean, to an extent, she makes them adapt to her rules, but to an extent, she also has to adapt. So if you notice in the movie in the beginning, she's all pink and fabulous, and then when she decides she's going to be serious, she starts getting her clothing changes.
Like the black Pradas come out.
Yeah, her hair, right? Her hairstyle changes. She does, start to fit in more. And then at the very end, in the trial scene, she comes back out in her pink dress, kind of like, I'm going to reclaim myself. And I'm going to fit in your world, but I'm also going to be a little bit of myself. And I guess we've all done that.
Well, that actually dovetails nicely into my next question. The stereotypes and privilege that you're talking about there, Christina. Does this absurd parody of the fashion plate arriving at the State Law School further accentuate a form of caste in modern Western society? And does the response of law students to Elle illustrate a form of bigotry?
I can speak to that first, because that was my initial thought of just, it's not the type of, it's not, no one's picketing about, blonde discrimination, discrimination against female blondes, but it's a real form of bigotry that people think. And I even remember when I was in law school, there were two blondes in my class that were beautiful and, kind of what people call the stereotypical blondes, beautiful hair, very tan, adorable outfits, and people did not take them seriously. And I mean, you can see it happening even today, right? Maybe less so today. I don't know, Hillary can talk to if that happens today in your classes, but I think it's definitely a form of bigotry, like any other, right? It's like, why, because of the color of your hair, are you not smart? That makes zero sense. It's like, why, because of the color of your skin, are you not smart? None of those things make sense, right? But yet these persist, and maybe because it's not seen as bigotry, or people just think it's funny to, like some things are okay to make fun of versus other things that are not okay. I don't know what it is, but I think that's a really good point. I think it is bigotry. I do. And I love Hillary, because you are blonde, and you can speak to this more of what discrimination you face. But I think it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I've been blonde my entire life and been through the blonde jokes my entire life. You just kind of get used to it. But I mean, it did kind of hit a little different in law school. I had people ask me, or they were talking about their college experience and this and that. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'm a first generation college too. And they looked at me and they're like, looked up and down. And they're like, you're a first generation college student, and like now you're here. And I like blew their mind. And I was like, why is that so hard to believe? Like, yeah, like I've struggled, I've gone through stuff too, and everything's just not pretty and pink. It's funny, I am from LA too, so when she does pull up to Harvard and everyone's like, go back to Malibu, Barbie, I'm like, oh yeah, like I moved to Utah at the mountains and told people I was from California, and they're like, oh yeah, that's fitting. And I was like, oh, I left there for a reason, but okay, thanks. So it's, it's fine, you live with it, but definitely still exists today.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the blondness as it is, what are women allowed to be? So the juxtaposition in the movie is, I mean, if she had short blonde bob, right, it would be okay. But no, she's big blonde hair and beautiful. And are women allowed to be beautiful and smart? Can you be beautiful and smart? And could a woman be not traditionally beautiful and be smart? I mean, are women, do we all have to be sort of medium? Do we have to be kind of like, who's the girlfriend in the movie from the East Coast? Vivian. Yeah, so she's like, that's the juxtaposition. Like Vivian, she has brown hair and brown cardigans and, she's pretty, of course, but she's not flashy, but Elle's flashy. And, do women have to kind of be in their place? And, you have to be good looking enough, but not too good looking. And, and is that fair? And then, of course, the different social strata, right? Because her family, they say, oh my gosh, you're too good looking to be a lawyer, right? They think that being a lawyer is a negative thing. You should go to Hollywood or be a fashion designer or do something, that we think is appropriate. So all these different social worlds and what can someone be or not be, and how much can we really break through that? We don't break through that all the time, that's for sure.
Okay, we have a question from one of our virtual attendees who says, I graduated from Georgetown Law in 1996 and worked for a firm in St. George for a few years. I showed up to court in Richfield. I was probably 25 years old and blonde, and the judge shouted in front of everybody in court that he was sick and tired of the firm sending their secretaries to handle these cases. I told him that we could call the bar and confirm my membership, but he just put me off. When I told the partners at my firm, also older white guys, and one of whom is now a federal judge, they were appalled and attempted to get a copy of the courtroom tape, which had mysteriously disappeared. The judge was an old white gentleman. This was about 25 years ago, and I am hoping this is a relic of the past. Do things like this still happen, or do you think there's more of an awareness that this is an unacceptable behavior?
I mean, I think I want Hillary to talk about this, but I will share my experience. I think, unfortunately, it definitely happened to me as well. I mean, I think probably all the women on this panel could share a story of where we were referred to as a secretary or thought there was a paralegal, and where's the kind of confused that this is the lawyer that they're dealing with. Even my when I did my prison litigation, where this inmate was very much nobody was about to represent him. I came for free, and even he was like, wait, you're my lawyer? What? He's like, no. So yeah, I think this discrimination happens. It happened to me in my career, but I don't know. I'm hoping it doesn't anymore. Hillary, is there, I don't know. Have you had this or no?
I mean, I haven't personally had this, definitely been in the back of my mind. I have heard experiences though recently from women who go to court in Utah, and the judge basically wants them wearing like black or white suits, and that's it. No dresses, no frills, no fancy colors or fun things. And I would love to see that change, but I definitely don't think, I'm hoping it's not as bad as her experience. That is just terrible. But I think we have came a long way.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I don't know. I think, my practice was in New York, and so it wasn't Utah, just to be clear. I think it probably happens everywhere. I don't know if it's just Utah, but there has been some stuff with the Utah bar that has said that women do face discrimination here, and I think that's definitely an issue to address for sure. But yeah, I think maybe if we call it out more, maybe that would be helpful, or I don't know. That's kind of the approach I've seen that works.
Yeah, well, there's definitely discrimination, and yes, it's definitely getting better, I would say, overall. But I think the concept of a uniform is really interesting, because you were talking about, can you wear fun things, can you wear frills? And yeah, I could wear this outfit to court easier than a man could wear pink pants to a court. In some ways, women have more freedom of dress than men do, for sure. We've had to break some barriers, but I think we've broken some of those. But I think men are still kind of like, you're going to wear a black or a gray or a navy suit, and that is what is acceptable. And I see women wearing more things. And so in terms of, some discrimination against men, or is it discrimination? Should we have a uniform? That's the concept, that there should be something that's acceptable to wear to court. It shows respect. Should those be completely broken, or should there be some kind of rule about what everybody has to wear?
Yeah, that's interesting, because in that sense, the judge's comment is maybe could be interpreted as helpful to women, right? We want you dressed the same as the men, and maybe that's in their way of thinking, well, men dress like this, you should too, versus we can wear whatever we want because no one knows what we should wear, right? Versus men, we know that you're supposed to wear these 3 colors. I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I have 2 things to add to that. Just to say, I will say our Dean of Career Development did wear pink pants on Monday, and I did comment on it. He said he wanted to wear something kind of snazzy for the first day of school. So I did comment on his pink pants, and that wasn't even in court. And then I'll just add, in terms of are these stereotypes and sexism still alive today? One thing I notice as dean is that I regularly receive comments on my age, or my perceived age is actually the better way of saying. I'm older than people think I am. But I regularly get the comment of, you're so young to be dean, which really goes to this interesting discussion of what is the perception of women, and what do you have to be, or what do you have to look like to be in a certain role. And I never quite know how to respond to that, because I know that people mean it as a compliment. But it's an interesting commentary on what are women in positions of authority supposed to look like in society. So that's one that I commonly encounter. We have a question in the audience.
Comment. I have to confess that when I first saw the announcement of this program, I thought, what in the world has happened to the University of Utah Law School? And this is the first time I've ever watched this film all the way through, because it pushes so many of my buttons. I've just not been able to make it through. This was very, very interesting, and I always have the same reaction to something like this that I have to my cousin Vinny, and that is, why wasn't I smart enough to write the script? Yeah. But your comments have all been very, very interesting, and I guess the part of the announcement that grabbed me more than anything else was the statement, this has had more impact on women wanting to go to law school than any other, I guess, film that you could think of. And it made me think back to a really interesting memoir that Justice Sonia Sotomayor has just written. And in that book, she explains that she decided when she was about 11 years old or 12 years old to become a lawyer because she watched Perry Mason on TV. And I just have to apologize to women in general for having the stereotypical reaction to all of this that I did, because if the film moves some people, some women, to following that career path with the same luster that Justice Sotomayor has provided in her career, and more power to the author. It's been a really enjoyable program. Thank you.
Really thoughtful commentary on how initially questioning why we would want to talk about this movie at the University of Utah. It's a comedy, it perpetuates stereotypes, but really thinking deeply about how movies and media can influence women and others to go to law school, and making a parallel to Sonia Sotomayor's recent memoir, where she talks about Perry Mason having a positive impact on her, and drawing the parallel to Legally Blonde. So thank you for that. Very much appreciated.
Can I make a comment on that as well? I love your comment so much. That was so insightful, and it made me think about, so a couple thoughts. One is I'm reading this book called Bridges Out of Poverty, and it talks about how middle class people can intersect with people in poverty and the different cultural schemes. It's written by social workers and sociologists. And something that it brings up there is that for people to get out of poverty, they need a role model or a mentor. And I feel like that's what you're talking about with Sonia Sotomayor, and also the Elle Woods effect. It's like she is become a mentor for these law students who never saw themselves, right? This vulnerable person who maybe likes cosmopolitan and likes clothes, going to law school. And finally that's made accessible. And I think it's similar to people in poverty, right? Having an example or a mentor of somebody. And I think it makes it accessible. And I think, thinking about some of my friends and some of the stereotypes and difficulties women still have. I have friends who have daughters in college, and a lot of them think in their mind, well, for instance, instead of being a doctor, I'll be a nurse or a PA, or instead of being a lawyer, I'll be a paralegal. Instead of a dentist, I'll be a dental assistant, because in their minds, they still haven't had this, like, what cool, sexy dentist show do we have? Or, what I mean? Right? So I just think we all need mentors. And I do think this movie is this kind of deeper message of, Elle Woods, for all of the craziness that she represents, is a mentor to women to become lawyers. And that's an empowering thing, as all of us, I'm sure, can attest. I mean, becoming a lawyer gives you this skill that you'll be grateful for the rest of your life. I think it's a magical tool that you have, and you can do a lot with it. And I think to further that, I think this movie helps us get there.
Yeah, sorry, I have a couple of random thoughts. First of all, I mean, you really don't ever know where someone's going to get their inspiration, right? Crazy movies, crazy video games, something somebody says. My dad's here, so he can attest to this, but I grew up in Farmington, Utah. I was the first person in my family to go to college, didn't know any lawyers whatsoever, but I got into debate in high school. And when I was 15, I was a debater, and I'm like, I am going to law school. I just decided right then. And then to your point about being a young woman, and maybe this is like this for men too, but I started law school when I was 21, graduated when I was 24, and being taken seriously as a very young female is very difficult. Now I would love for people to think I'm super young and be confused about my age, but they don't. But yeah, it's very challenging to be taken seriously. And in terms of advice, I mean, you can still do it. My advice is take yourself seriously, be serious, and do your job really, really well, and people will take you seriously.
I think that's my biggest thing, is I've always said, oh my God, I look like I'm 12. No one's going to take me seriously. I'm 24. I, came to law school right after college, and at my law firm, or just doing interviews in general, I was like, they're just going to think I'm a baby. Like, I can't practice the law. But I think this last summer, I really came into myself, and I believed in myself. I'm like, I need to have a voice, and that's just what people need to do. And you'll just be bigger than you could ever imagine, and do whatever your heart desires.
I have to say, this raises a whole nother issue, but this question of intergenerational wisdom, we typically look to people who are older than us for wisdom, but I actually think there's a lot of wisdom in the younger generations too. I was walking across campus earlier today, and there's a garden right by the law school, and I'm assuming they were undergraduate students or students were working in the garden. And I was like, I could learn so much from them. They have a lot to share with me. And so I find it interesting that we think of wisdom being passed down rather than kind of intergenerational transmission of wisdom, which is very interesting and definitely something that we see a lot in law school. We do have another question from John Call, who said, do you think the movie adequately conveys a gender-neutral message that the most effective lawyers are able to relate to and understand all types of people?
I would say no. I think what it shows is that we need all kinds of lawyers, because different lawyers will understand different people. And I think that's what she really shows, right? She connected so well with this client. That's why she was so effective. But if you don't have a diverse team of people, both color, gender, socioeconomic status, background, you're not going to be able to effectively represent all the clients you want. That's my thought.
That's a really good point. And I think one of the last scenes of the movie, the end of the trial, really brings that point home, because you see everybody bringing different skills to her ultimate success, right? So she brings the knowledge that cracks the case, but not Warner, but the other white male who's in the movie, who's very book smart but doesn't have kind of the personality that she does, he's the one who leans over, right, and has the sight to the court decision that allows her to be to be the lawyer in the room. And then, of course, the Emmett character says, I'm the one who'll supervise you. So it does kind of nicely show that everybody can bring different things, and diversity of people does lead to success. So there's a nice metaphor there. We also have a question from our former, so we've got our current Student Bar Association and a former Student Bar Association president, Chase Wild, who said, Hillary and a good pal embrace the Elle Woods Association, but do you think any woman attending law school resent being compared to Elle Woods for any reason? And hey, Chase, it's so good to see you, hear from you.
I think so, and I've thought about this also. Hi, Chase. She just obviously comes across as a, girl that loves pink, kind of a bimbo, doesn't understand stuff. But then once you get to the end of the movie and just like see her journey, that's where I really resonated. And I was like, if she can have, all this personality, love fashion and everything, and still be the successful, practice the law, that's who I want to be. Like, I want to have it all. I don't want to have to lose a piece of me. But I do think maybe some people haven't gone around to that, and they do resent being called Elle Woods because right away they think, oh, you just don't think I'm smart enough to be here.
I would say we all have to give each other a break too. Someone's going to call you Elle Woods and you might be offended, and just don't take it as an offense. And if someone calls you super young, just say thank you. There's a lot of things to be offended about for sure, but there's also, we do have to give each other a little bit of a break.
Back to my human foible comments, I feel like, at least in my head, I make assumptions and, judgments all the time that are completely wrong. And I hope if I ever say them that people will have grace with me, and I have the same for them, because I agree with you. I think there's a lot of really hard things, but a comment like that, I hope we can kind of laugh off, or the young comment. I get that too. I remember when I started at BYU Law, I went over to the economics department to meet with my co-author, and another older gentleman who looks like a professor, right, it's quote unquote, was like, oh, are you interested in majoring in economics? I'm like, wow, no, I'm, not even close to 19 or 20 years old and thinking about my major, but thank you. I, try to take it as a compliment, I guess.
Yes, I never quite know what to say in response to that comment, but I know that the minute the comments stop, I'll probably be sad. So we have another comment from an anonymous attendee who says, I'm a man and have practiced law for many years. When I was a law student, 1/3 of my class were women and all were smart. Sandra Day O'Connor had not yet been appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Women attorneys I worked with talked of the discrimination they faced because they were women practicing law. Today, half the attorneys in my organization are women, all excellent practitioners. Almost half the attorneys who oppose me are women and also excellent practitioners. I am sure each of these women has faced discrimination based on sex, but I sense that the women I work with feel respected by their colleagues. I hope this means that we have progressed socially since I was in law school. Any thoughts on that?
I love that. More comments like that, please. Make us feel great about the practice of law. No, I think that's beautiful. I do think the numbers support this comment, and I'm hoping that is the case. And as you get out to practice law, I think, the more judges see a blonde woman in front of them, or more women in general, that it becomes more routine and they don't assume, right, you're not a lawyer or something like that. But yeah, I like that comment a lot. I appreciate them sharing.
I would say 99% of the time I feel respected. I feel like a respected member of the community and the profession, and have no issues. It's more rare that I don't. So, of course, those stand out in your mind, but it's rare.
Yeah, I haven't came across any problems, but like you said, always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking it. But we have came such a long way. Like, the majority of our administration now are all females. SBA, I think, I could be wrong, but the last 2 years, last year was the first time where vice president and president are both females, and the same this year. So we definitely have made a huge impact, progressed a lot.
Great. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. So with our remaining 5 minutes, I would love to hear from each of the panelists about what you think the moral of Legally Blonde is. What is the moral of the story?
I guess I'll start some on the end. Hillary already kind of said it, but my notes were kind of the moral of the story is that we need lawyers who are individuals, and being true to who you are and your background, even if it is unique to others, is the most important thing we can do as lawyers and as people, right? We can't ever be the guy from Law and Order, because we're ourselves and we have our own unique skills. And so I think the more we can embrace who we are and not trying to fit a mold of what we think this box of lawyer looks like, I think the more effective we'll be, the more confident we'll be, the more people will trust us as clients. And I think, it would be better for the bar to see all the different array of lawyers, both personality and color and, gender and all those things.
Yeah, exactly. Hit it on the nose. I would say the same exact thing. In Elle Woods' graduation speech, I think she really just sums up everything you're supposed to take away from the movie. The law needs passion, the law needs personality, and just be true to yourself and know you belong, and the law needs that. And it really opened the doors for people to enter the legal community.
I'm going to answer a different question. Is that okay? So one thing you notice in the movie is both Elle Woods from Beverly Hills and Warner from Massachusetts, somewhere in the East Coast, Warner III, his new girlfriend, Vivian, a lot of people with money and status and not brown people. And so there are some other stereotypes that the movie doesn't tackle, right? It doesn't tackle racism. It doesn't tackle, what if you grow up somewhere where you have no money whatsoever, and having a Coppola come do your video to get into Harvard at the last moment, because that's a thing. What if you don't have those sort of resources? Even where Elle was, even though it was a big leap to get to Harvard, it wasn't as big a leap as it is for someone in a very different life circumstance. So I appreciate everything the movie did tackle, but there are certainly lots of things it did not tackle.
Well, things for us to think about at a future date. So I want to thank our amazing panelists for being with us today. Thank you to everyone who participated virtually. It was lovely to have you all, and we will continue discussing this theme of diversity and diversity in the legal profession next month, when our next Dean's Book Review tackles the question of being Hispanic in America and what it means to be white. So we'll be exploring National Hispanic Heritage Month in September, and I hope that you can all join us for our next Dean's Book Review. Thank you so much.